High school quarterback does something shocking seconds after he's crowned homecoming king. It was supposed to be his moment. Max Aken, the golden boy of Fossil Ridge, finally crowned homecoming king. But in a heartbeat, he turned the entire night upside down with one unexpected move that left thousands speechless. Fossil Ridge High School wasn't just any school. It was a legacy, a name that echoed through the town like an old song everyone knew by heart. And at the heart of it all? Homecoming. Every year, the event wasn't just a football game. It was an institution, a sacred tradition. For students, it was a rite of passage. For parents, a reminder of their own youth. And for the town, an event that brought everyone together under the bright stadium lights. The weeks leading up to homecoming were electric. The hallways buzzed with excitement. Banners hanging from lockers, whispers about who would be crowned king and queen, and the rhythmic beat of the marching band practicing long into the evening. But on that particular Friday night, as the stadium filled to capacity, there was a feeling in the air, something different, something no one could quite put their finger on. The scent of popcorn and fresh-cut grass mixed with the roar of the crowd as students in maroon and gold chanted their team's name with reckless abandon. The energy was infectious, but beneath the cheers and laughter, there was an undercurrent, a question lingering just below the surface. Would tonight be like every other homecoming? Or was something unforgettable about to unfold? Among the crowd, one name stood above the rest: Max Aken. Max wasn't just the quarterback of the Fossil Ridge Wolverines. He was the quarterback. The kind of guy who seemed like he was born with a football in one hand and a destiny in the other. Tall, with an easy smile and a confidence that wasn't arrogance, but rather an assurance that he belonged under the Friday night lights. Growing up, Max had always been the kid everyone rooted for. His talent on the field was undeniable, but it wasn't just about the touchdowns or the pinpoint passes. It was about his grit, his heart, and his unwavering determination. He wasn't born a star. He had fought for it every step of the way. Early morning practices, late-night strategy meetings, injuries that would have sent anyone else packing. Max took it all in stride. But with great talent came great expectations. His parents, his coaches, his teammates, all looked to him as the beacon of hope. And with every game won, with every record shattered, the weight on his shoulders grew heavier. So when his name was announced as a nominee for Homecoming King, it felt like another box to check, another title to claim. Except, this one felt different. It wasn't just about skill. It was about who he was deep down, beyond the field, beyond the helmet. Could he be that person too? If Max was the golden boy, then KL Norwood was the soul of Fossil Ridge football. KL wasn't a star quarterback or a record-breaking receiver. In fact, he never set foot on the field in full gear. Cerebral palsy made sure of that. But where others saw limitations, KL saw possibilities. And that's what made him extraordinary. As the team manager, KL wasn't just responsible for the little things: water bottles, play sheets, locker room pep talks. He was the heartbeat of the team. He showed up early, left late, and knew every play by heart, even if he couldn't execute them himself. Despite his condition, KL had something that set him apart: an unshakable positivity. No matter how bad practice went, no matter how tough the opponent, he was the first to lift everyone's spirits. It was the kind of optimism that made you believe in something bigger than yourself. And Max? He and KL weren't just teammates, they were brothers in arms. The star quarterback and the team manager, an unlikely duo, but one that had stood the test of time. They had spent countless hours on and off the field, talking strategy, life, and dreams that sometimes seemed just within reach. When KL's name appeared alongside Max's in the Homecoming King nominations, no one was surprised. He wasn't just popular, he was loved. And maybe, just maybe, tonight would be his moment. As the halftime whistle blew and the announcer's voice echoed across the stadium, a hush fell over the crowd. This was it, the moment that would decide who would wear the coveted crown. Max stood with the other nominees, hands clasped behind his back, his eyes scanning the stands. He could see his parents, standing near the top row, his dad giving him a small thumbs up. The cheerleaders stood poised on the sidelines, pom-poms frozen mid-motion, their eyes wide with anticipation. And there, standing just off to the side, was KL, a nervous yet hopeful smile playing on his lips. And the 2023 Fossil Ridge Homecoming King is, the announcer's voice boomed, dragging out the suspense like a slow-motion replay. Max Aken. The stadium exploded. Cheers, whistles, and applause erupted from every corner. Max felt the weight of the moment hit him like a linebacker. But instead of elation, something else gnawed at the edges of his mind. As the crown was placed on his head, something in his gut told him this wasn't the way it was supposed to be. He stole a glance at KL, whose eyes still shone with pride despite the disappointment he tried so hard to mask. And in that split second, Max made a decision that no one saw coming. Max Aken should have been basking in the glory of his victory lap. With the golden crown sitting atop his head and the cheers of thousands echoing in his ears, he had every reason to soak it all in. But something inside him, something deeper than the roar of the crowd, urged him to stop. And so he did. Mid-stride, Max slowed, then came to a complete halt in the middle of the field, his gaze shifting beyond the celebration, beyond the flashing cameras, beyond the adoring fans. He was looking at one person. Norwood. The energy in the stadium shifted almost instantly. A wave of confusion rippled through the crowd as whispers replaced the once deafening cheers. Why wasn't Max celebrating? Where was he going? All eyes followed his line of sight, straight to the sidelines where Norwood stood frozen, his hands gripping the armrests of his wheelchair. KL's expression was a mixture of awe and disbelief. His eyes widened, a flicker of uncertainty shadowing his usual optimism. Was Max really looking at him? Was this happening? The world around him blurred, the bright lights of the stadium fading into insignificance. With a deep breath, Max raised his hand and gestured for KL to come forward. The stadium fell into a haunting silence. Even the announcer, caught off guard, fell silent mid-sentence. The once thunderous stadium was now a vacuum, holding its collective breath as KL, with cautious hesitation, wheeled himself toward the center of the field. Max's eyes never left him, and at that moment, it was as if time itself had paused. As KL reached him, Max didn't hesitate. Without a word, he dropped to one knee before his friend, his fingers gently reaching for the golden crown resting on his head. A hush fell over the crowd. Parents craned their necks. Cheerleaders clutched their pom-poms in stunned disbelief. Coaches stood frozen on the sidelines. No one moved. No one spoke. Slowly, deliberately, Max lifted the crown off his own head and held it for a moment, just long enough for KL to realize what was happening. The wheelchair-bound team manager blinked in shock, his lips parting but no words escaping. Then, with a tenderness that transcended the grandeur of the moment, Max placed the crown gently on KL's head. The weight of it was nothing compared to the emotion behind it. "You deserve this more than I do," Max said, his voice steady yet thick with emotion. KL's hands trembled as they touched the crown, his eyes welling up with tears that glistened under the stadium lights. He tried to speak, but only a choked laugh escaped, a laugh filled with disbelief, joy, and gratitude. The crowd, still stunned, watched in awe. But then the moment landed. The stadium erupted. What began as scattered applause quickly swelled into a tidal wave of cheers, whistles, and chants. The students rose to their feet, stomping and clapping in unison. From the sidelines, Max's coach wiped a tear from his eye. Parents in the stands exchanged looks of astonishment and admiration. Max stood and pulled KL into a tight hug. "You're the real king," he whispered, his voice shaking. And for the first time in his life, KL felt like he wasn't on the sidelines anymore. He was at the center of it all, right where he belonged. If the crowd had been loud before, it was nothing compared to now. The sheer raw emotion pulsing through the stands was almost too much to contain. Some students jumped onto the bleachers, waving their hands in the air, chanting KL's name over and over again. Cole, Cole, Cole. Parents wiped their eyes discreetly, overwhelmed by the purity of the moment. Teachers who had watched these boys grow up stood with their hands over their hearts, marveling at the display of kindness and humility. The cheerleaders, some with tears streaking down their faces, formed a tunnel, clapping and waving Kale through like he was royalty. Even the football players, the toughest guys on the team, stood in quiet respect, nodding their heads in acknowledgement of what they had just witnessed. In the press box, the announcer's voice cracked with emotion as he tried to regain control of the situation. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we can all agree that tonight we have more than just a football game. We have a lesson in what true leadership looks like. The noise was deafening, but amidst it all, Kale could only hear the pounding of his own heart. And then came the moment that truly solidified it all. Max lifted Kale's arm high in the air, just like a champion. The stadium practically exploded. The two friends stood in the center of the field, the crowd still roaring, but in that moment, it was just them. Kale, overcome with emotion, finally found his voice. "Why did you do this?" he asked, his voice thick with tears. Max grinned. "Because you're the most positive guy I've ever met. You're the reason this team stays strong. It belongs to you." Kale blinked rapidly, trying to hold back the tears, but they came anyway. He looked down at the crowd, then back up at Max. I never thought I'd be standing here." Max chuckled, his arm still around Kale's shoulder. "Well, get used to it. You're the king now." Norwood shook his head, his smile wider than ever. "Nah, Max, we are." The two friends hugged again, this time tighter, longer. And as the cameras flashed, capturing the unforgettable moment, it was clear that this night wasn't about a crown or a title. It was about friendship, loyalty, and the power of selflessness. As they made their way off the field together, the roar of the crowd echoed in their ears. But for KL, the sound of Max's words would always resonate louder. "You deserve this." What happened on the Fossil Ridge football field that night didn't stay there. Within minutes, the stadium's electric energy spilled over into the digital world. A shaky phone recording of Max kneeling before KL, crown in hand, was the first to hit social media. The caption read simply, "This is what real friendship looks like." And then like wildfire, it spread. By the time the final whistle of the game blew, #RealKingKel was trending on Twitter. TikTok was flooded with emotional replays of the moment, each set to inspirational music, with captions like "Faith in humanity restored" and "True leadership in action." Instagram stories were filled with behind-the-scenes snapshots. KL's stunned face, Max's proud smile, the crowd roaring in the background. Even local news stations picked up the story, with reporters scrambling to interview anyone who had witnessed the unforgettable moment. Then came the avalanche of comments. "This should be on national news." "Max Aken, you are a hero." KL Norwood deserves all the crowns in the world. Celebrities, influencers, and former athletes chimed in, praising Max's selfless act. Former NFL players tweeted their support, calling Max a true MVP on and off the field. News outlets from across the country shared the story, each adding their own spin on the homecoming king who gave it all away. It was no longer just a moment, it was a movement. While the world celebrated the story online, those closest to Max and KL were experiencing it in a much deeper way. Max, usually a man of few words, found himself at the center of a media frenzy. But when a reporter finally caught up with him in the locker room after the game, his response was simple. It was the right thing to do. KL deserved it more than me. He's always been the real king. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed a depth of emotion that words could never fully capture. It wasn't about being humble. It was about truth. KL, on the other hand, was still processing what had happened. Sitting in his wheelchair in the corner of the locker room, crown still slightly askew on his head, he shook his head in disbelief. "I don't even know what to say," he admitted, wiping away the last of his tears. I never imagined something like this." But deep down, KL knew this moment wasn't just for him. It was for every kid who ever felt invisible, every dreamer who thought they'd always be on the sidelines. Their coach, Coach Harris, a grizzled veteran of high school football, had seen a lot of things in his career, but nothing quite like this. "I've been coaching for 20 years, he said, voice thick with pride. "But tonight reminded me why I do this. Football isn't just a game. It's about heart. And tonight, Max and KL showed more heart than I've ever seen on any scoreboard." The team, usually known for their tough guy attitudes, huddled around KL, patting his back and taking turns placing their hands on the crown. Some of them, the ones who rarely showed emotion, simply nodded at Max in silent respect. And for Max and KL, the game, the crown, the cheers, they were all secondary to something far more important: brotherhood. As the days passed, the echoes of that night didn't fade. They only grew louder. Fossil Ridge High School wasn't the same anymore. Something had shifted. The usual cliques that divided the student body, jocks, nerds, artists, suddenly felt meaningless. There was a new kind of unity in the air. Random acts of kindness popped up everywhere, from students helping each other with homework to volunteering at local shelters. The student council quickly jumped on board, launching a #RealKing challenge, encouraging students to recognize and celebrate the unsung heroes around them. Stories poured in, of cafeteria workers being thanked with handwritten notes, of bullied students finding unexpected allies, of friendships rekindled. Local businesses got involved, offering free meals and discounts in honor of Norwood Appreciation Week, and the city mayor even declared a Fossil Ridge Unity Day. More importantly, KL's story inspired a special needs inclusion initiative, encouraging more students with disabilities to take part in school events without hesitation. And every day, as KL rolled through the halls with his crown still proudly displayed in his locker, he was met with high-fives and shouts of, "Hey, King KL." For Max, the transformation of his school meant more than any trophy ever could. He didn't just win a game that night. He won something far greater. He won hearts. And in the process, he changed the entire meaning of what it meant to be homecoming king. In a world obsessed with trophies and accolades, Max Aken's quiet act of kindness stood out like a beacon of light. It wasn't scripted, it wasn't expected, it was pure, and it was real. And that's what made it so powerful. What Max did that night wasn't just about a crown. It was about recognition, respect, and redefining what it means to be a leader. In a single moment, he reminded everyone watching, both in the stadium and across the internet, that true greatness isn't measured by wins or titles, but by the impact you have on others. It's easy to believe that grand gestures are needed to change the world, but Max proved otherwise. Sometimes, one small act of selflessness can shift an entire community, spark conversations, and inspire change. That moment on the field turned an ordinary high school football game into an extraordinary life lesson. Norwood, once just the guy on the sidelines, was now a symbol of resilience, of hope, of the fact that everyone, no matter their circumstances, deserves a moment to shine. And Max? He became something far greater than a homecoming king. He became an icon of kindness. As students, parents, and teachers reflected on that unforgettable night, a common realization dawned. The smallest gestures often leave the biggest marks. It was a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. At its core, this story was never about a crown. It was about something far deeper: friendship. Max and KL's bond was forged through years of shared struggles, laughter, and mutual respect. KL might not have worn a jersey, but he was as much a part of the team as anyone else. And in that moment, under the glaring stadium lights, Max did what friends do. He lifted KL up, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Friendship, true friendship, isn't measured in grand gestures, but in quiet moments of understanding and unwavering support. Max didn't see KL's wheelchair. He saw his heart, his determination, and his unbreakable spirit. That night, Max taught the world a valuable lesson. Kindness isn't about giving away what you have. It's about recognizing who truly deserves it. And KL? He didn't need a crown to prove his worth, but having it placed on his head for the world to see, that was a victory that went far beyond the football field. As the second half of the game resumed, Max jogged back onto the field. The game was still on, the crowd still buzzing, but something had changed. He wasn't just a quarterback anymore. He had made the most unforgettable play of the night, and it had nothing to do with football. KL, now sitting on the sidelines with the crown resting proudly on his head, beamed with a kind of joy that no championship could ever bring. For the first time, he wasn't just watching the action. He was part of it. That night, KL Norwood became the pride of Fossil Ridge High School. And Max? He didn't need a crown to know he had won something far more valuable. Respect, admiration, a legacy of kindness that would last far beyond his time at the school. As the final whistle blew and the team huddled together, Max looked over at KL and grinned. In his heart, he knew the truth. He had already won the most important game of all. And with that, the two friends walked off the field, one crowned by tradition, the other crowned by the hearts of an entire community. Fossil Ridge High School would have many more football games, many more homecoming kings. But years from now, when people reminisced about that night, they wouldn't remember the final score. They would remember the moment a quarterback chose kindness over glory. They would remember the way an entire stadium erupted, not for a touchdown, but for a simple, beautiful act of humanity. And they would remember a boy named KL Norwood, a king not just for a night, but for a lifetime. In a world that often celebrates power, success, and outward achievements, Max Aken's selfless act serves as a powerful reminder that true greatness lies in kindness, humility, and the ability to lift others up. His decision to share the spotlight with KL Norwood wasn't just a fleeting moment of generosity. It was a statement that resonated far beyond the stadium lights. It showed that leadership isn't about standing above others, but standing beside them. That real friendship is measured not by words, but by actions. In one simple yet profound gesture, Max redefined what it means to be a champion. Not by winning for himself, but by ensuring someone else felt seen, valued, and celebrated. This story teaches us that no matter how small our actions may seem, they have the power to inspire, to unite, and to change lives. Because at the end of the day, the most enduring victories aren't those won on the field, but those won in the hearts of others.